Well, hey, welcome to A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall, coming at you from two different cities in California. Actually, they're both right around the same temperature now.
Yep,
It's
just about.
it's
This is
not
the
too
warm
bad here.
season.
It's not too bad here in Bakersfield right now. And it's like a warm season for you?
Yes, it's sort of like it's late summer for us. The warm part of the year is the end of September and early October, and then by mid to late October it starts to cool down.
Sorry, I'm trying to do something
Y-
here, but yeah.
We've got to do our housekeeping.
Yep, share to a page, send it over to Kerncast and post, and there we go, coming up on Kerncast. Well, again, this is A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. This is where a capitalist conservative pastor and a socialist liberal atheist come together and have civilized discussions and work out all the problems that exist in the world. If everybody would just tune in and listen to us, all of the world's problems would eventually get solved. So it's up to you. It's up to you who are watching right now. It's up to you. Share this with everybody you know. Right?
Share.
Yeah, share it with everybody you know. Send it to your congressman and your senator and all your representatives and everything, because they need to see this is how it's done. Not with all the money exchanging hands and bribes and all that kind of stuff. No, just simple discussion. Public, open discussion between, a couple of opposing sides, and people get to watch and you know what, maybe even change the minds of the person you're talking to. So this is
It
how it's
does
done
happen.
right here. It does happen.
It does
Yes.
happen. Right here on this show, even.
Yes. And there's a couple of the issues. Gosh, now we're like 60 or 70 shows into this, if you can believe that. We've been doing this for a minute now, and there's a few back there where, like, you know what? When it really comes down to it, I'm not so sure I'm standing exactly where I thought I would be standing on certain issues and things. So I know that for sure our discussions have caused me. I don't know if I'm sure I've changed positions on one or two things, but mostly it's more like, you know what? There is. There's more room for, what's the word? There's more room for compromise in certain areas
Yeah.
than I thought there were before. Simply because, you know what, you can make a compromise in this area, draw a line here, and then make that, and by doing so, you're keeping that Overton window from moving one direction or another, instead of just like, no, it only has to be over here, and then everything swings even farther. So.
hmm Welcome to the revolution, comrade.
Don't call me comrade.
Yeah, he's not there yet.
No.
All right. Well, hello, Carrie. I see that you're on,
Yeah,
and
thank you for joining us.
I don't see how many people are on for some reason. It says we have a few, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, I'm
All
glad
right.
everybody's joining us here today. There's an interesting topic we were talking about right now, because I live my life as an artist. I mean, I what a wonderful thing to be able to say that I make a living making art. You know what I mean? Like not everybody gets to do that. Not every person who wants to be an artist gets to be able to have a job that they get paid to create art. And that's what I get to do. Sometimes it's video, sometimes it's graphics, sometimes whatever. Like this week, man, for our church. Man, I was literally on the other side of this wall in my office, sitting at my computer from Monday till late Friday, just editing video. We shot video last week, and it was really a lot of fun. I mean, we had a whole crew of our people there. My son was helping us. My son Gabriel was helping us, and having all the camera gear there, all of our campus pastors in one spot. In fact, I think it might be one of the first times all of our campus pastors were together in one place, and we had cameras rolling everywhere and had a whole discussion for our vision weekend and stuff like that. And then I sat there and I edited it and edited all this other, for our life groups coming up, like 4 DVDs worth of life group stuff. And then our vision weekend. And then each campus had its own intro video where everybody talks just about that campus. So I had 5 different videos for 5 different campuses, plus our message video. And then I had to do 2 of those and the message video in Spanish for our 2 Spanish-speaking campuses, and record all the people coming in for translation and voiceover and all that kind of stuff. So it was a whole a myriad of things where I was just sitting at my computer editing just almost nonstop for 5 days. But I get to do that. As an artist, I get to create content, and I'm really grateful for that. And I wanted to start off this conversation by saying that I am really grateful that I'm able to do that kind of thing and make a living doing that. But there's a movie that came out this weekend. I have not seen it yet. I have a few. I know a few people who have seen it. It came out this weekend. Called. I think it's just called Joker. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
Joker. I think it's just Joker. I was really interested in seeing it. Haven't seen it yet, and then I've been hearing from so many people that it is really, really, really dark. Like really, like I don't know how to describe it because I haven't seen it, but the way people have described it to me, it's just like it's really darkly, gruesomely violent, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to see that. I know that my older son was really interested in seeing it. And I think actually he did go see it with his friends off at college, but after reading about it, I'm like, I don't know if I want to I don't know, be influenced by that or to participate in that or anything like that. But it started to make me think because I heard about an incident just in some people talking like in a review or something like that, that they were at their showing of this movie Joker. And I guess in the movie Joker starts killing people. I don't know. But while that was happening in some really gruesome moment, I guess one of the people in the audience started cheering and laughing, and then it started disturbing everybody. And then they asked him to be quiet, and he started cheering louder during the death. And then people started leaving for fear that this guy was about to do something. Like they thought he was like, is this guy about to like pull out a gun and start killing everybody here because he's like cheering on these? And it made me start to think and question, even as an artist, saying, do artists share any responsibility in how their art influences society? And then that leads to a greater question I want to talk with you about, Marshall, is do I have it backwards? Does art influence society, or is art a product of society and culture?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? You said that you studied a little bit on this in college. I'm going to look at some of the comments and while you're talking.
Yeah, I took a course called Literature as a Mirror of Society. And part of it was I did sort of this little thesis paper at the end of the year on how society, how art, how society is reflected in art. And I did it it had to do with technology. And so I was looking at how artificial intelligence was depicted in films at different stages in human development, and how in the late 60s, as the Cold War was really nice and hot, how people had a very skeptical view of artificial intelligence. And then after the Cold War, their view of artificial intelligence reversed, and they became very warm and towards it. And I
How
compared
far after? I mean, did you not see the movie Terminator?
well, right.
That's
Well,
the
no,
80s.
and I think Terminator was part of that again. And in fact, Terminator doesn't pull any punches. Right, it goes straight to the Terminator apocalypse or whatever is caused by Skynet seizing control of the world's nuclear weapons and nuking the planet.
Same thing with The Matrix, and same
Right.
thing with several other
And I think to
big
keep it
movie
consistent,
chains,
because I was looking at 2001: A Space Odyssey by Kubrick,
which was
and
1969.
right, and then I looked at 2010, and in 2010, humanity was being saved by technology, and in 2001, that movie, people were being killed by the technology. So again, our society is kind of flipped and flopped on this issue, but the bottom line is the books and ultimately the movies were reflecting what was happening in society.
Mm-hmm.
So in society, we have mass shootings, we have people doing crazy stuff in theaters. We know that in Aurora, Colorado, there was a mass shooting inside a theater
Mm-hmm.
during a Batman movie. So obviously, this guy standing up and doing whatever he did, to me, that's probably not protected speech. It's no
Oh no.
different than shouting fire in a crowded theater. I hoped at a minimum he was arrested or at least cited.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that's like really a horrible, terrible thing to do. Is the movie encouraging people to be violent?
You know what? I'm not real sure, but you have movies like The Purge and the series of movies like The Purge and several other ones, or the one that was recently pulled by, can't remember, was it Warner Brothers? Somebody recently pulled it where literally it was a movie depicting elites who get to go to this ranch to kill and hunt red state deplorables. It's literally a movie about hunting right wingers and killing them.
Mm.
Ultimately the trailer was pulled, and ultimately I think the movie was pulled by the studio. But again, we have a whole series of movies. You have the Saw movies. You have all these other types of movies that really depict, the idea of carrying out these actions, and it's, I don't know. At what point are you the artist now the person crying fire in a theater? Does it ever get to that point? I'm sure it does at some point, but I mean, you go back to, this isn't new. You go back to, what was it, 1930s, with the War of the Worlds with
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles, where I mean they kind of started it off as saying, it was they started off as their show, but if you came in the middle of the show, it sounded like a real report was going on, and people started freaking out, and they had to, like, for those of you who don't know, it was a radio show where the Martians invaded the Earth, but it was done so well on the radio as a radio show that people thought it was really happening. They thought it was actual news going on their radio, and people were freaking out. And I don't know if people died trying to do. I don't know if any deaths were reported, because I can't remember the details of that. But it was one of those. It was one of the very first incidences of art sounding, and looking real enough to frighten people into action. So
one of the things is art is supposed to evoke an emotional response. That's kind of, whether it's a poem or a painting or even outright propaganda. Propaganda is literally art that has been pressed into service to motivate people to do something, to shape attitudes or opinions, to motivate
honestly,
people to behave. That's
propaganda. I believe a lot of Hollywood movies is that. So,
but isn't everything propaganda if it influences people to, have a certain feeling or to do something, to buy a certain product?
I mean, it could be. Let's really hit that. The last couple of weeks here at our church, we were doing a series called Called Up. It's the idea of somebody getting called up from the minor leagues to the big leagues, and we're using it as an image of, and as a paraphrase of the idea of serving and volunteering at the church, and like, hey, there's a place for you. You need to step up and take this place, get off the bench, type of thing, and everything like that. So we showed stories of people who are volunteers. Like, I went and recorded people. They tell us, hey, here's where I volunteer. Here's how I started. Here's what it's done in my life. Would those videos being played at church with the intention of encouraging people to volunteer, is that what you would consider propaganda?
Well,
or is propaganda specifically lies?
Well, propaganda is usually political. Well, what art is actually truth?
Well, that's the biggest thing. When I teach cinematography, I'm part of the Christian Youth Film Society. We actually have a film camp coming up in a couple of weeks, actually being hosted at our Northwest campus. But that's one of the things that I teach the youth. I said, the first thing that's happening, I go, filmmaking is lying. We just have to get that out. We're Christians, and we're teaching you how to make films, but we're just telling you right now, just simply the fact of you pointing the camera over here, you are specifically excluding everywhere else that the camera's not pointing. And you're saying, this is what I want you to look at. So it is a lie. The act of a lot of times the act of creating art is a lie, but acting is a lie. All of that it's pretending, and it's all that. So is it the actual act of lying and pretending that's wrong, or is it the act of lying and pretending in order to lie to your audience to make them think a falsehood? To me, I look at propaganda. I look at propaganda as something that's the negative connotations of propaganda is something entertainment that's created to sway your opinion against what you would normally believe, to sway your opinion against your own beliefs, to sway your opinion most of the time that's pushing a false narrative to sway you away from the opinion that you would normally have and to sway you away from the truth. That's how I figure propaganda. I think, I don't know, is everything propaganda?
Everything is control, or an attempt at control. This was one of the things that Michel Foucault spoke about how there's this sort of cacophony, if you will, going on all around us. He used the word cacophony. And everything that we hear, everything that we see, whenever somebody is speaking, speech is the currency of control. People are trying to influence us. They're trying to get us to do something other than what we are doing right now or might otherwise be inclined to do. They're
Hmm.
trying to control us. Now, control can be good, it can also be bad. If I'm trying to get people to do harmful things to others, to violate people's rights, then that's obviously a coercive, bad form of control. But at the same time, if I'm trying to tell people, hey, buckle up, get your vaccinations, obey the law, be a good citizen, recycle, well, this is also a form of coercion and control, but most of us would find it positive.
Hmm.
And it's simply how things are. It's how humans interact. We are social creatures. So we are constantly trying to influence one another to do what we think is best for the society at large and often for ourselves as individuals.
So
So
where does it cross that line then? I want to. I'm getting kind of stuck on this one word, but where does art become propaganda, or are you saying that all art is propaganda? What if it is? Then why even have a word called propaganda? What is
mhm.
propaganda that sets it apart in your opinion?
It's all control. Every bit of art that we produce is trying to evoke some sort of a response from you. It
Right,
can
but
be a
does
feel
that
good response, like, wow, that's a really beautiful
right? But does
image,
that make
and
it
I feel
propaganda?
relaxed looking at it.
But
You
does
know,
that make it propaganda?
no, I think with propaganda, it's usually specific to like a political idea, some kind of ideology that's being promoted. When we talk about propaganda, we're usually talking about politics. So to me, propaganda would be specific to politics. Now, we could and probably should Google the definition of propaganda right about now, which I can go ahead and do for us so that we speak accurately on this. But in my opinion, my hot take
Yeah.
is unless it's political speech, it's not necessarily propaganda, but
But
it's still control. It's still an effort at control.
yeah, well, art is a way of well, it depends. I don't think all art is a way of controlling. I think some people just express. I think art for the sake of art are just people trying to express what they see or replicate what they see or try. I remember it was something that I did for myself. I was on my way to it was at BC Bakersfield College on my way to
Hmm.
Mr. Bradford's history class. I remember it well. I parked up on the top hill at BC and walked down, and the wind was just blowing so hard. And I love the wind. I just love the wind. I've always loved like sailing. I love convertible cars. For whatever reason, I love the wind in my. And I just remember walking down and just feeling the wind blow over me. And when I got to class, I was like 10 minutes early and opened up my note page and just drew this picture of a guy standing on a hill with his eyes closed, head looking up, his arms open. He was shirtless, but had a trench coat, and the trench coat was blowing in the wind, and the grass was blowing, and his hair was blowing back. And it was just some, I drew it just because I felt like that. That's how I felt. And I wanted to just draw something in that. I never showed it to anybody. I never posted it. I don't even know whatever happened to it. But I remember drawing that in my notebook because I just had to express in that moment how I felt, even if it was just expressing it to myself. So I don't think not all art is control. I think art can be just a thing of self-expression. But I think a lot of art that we see in our society today, which everywhere you turn, every printed thing, I'm looking over here on the floor of the studio that I'm in is a case of bottled water. And there it's designed. There's a picture of water. It looks like water, and it says Kirkland. Because I got it at Costco. But yeah, somebody designed that to evoke the feeling of this is refreshing. Here's water. It's fresh and pure, and get like that art right there was for a purpose of influencing the person buying it. And everywhere you look, we're surrounded by art that is commercialized. But I don't know that I definitely don't believe that all art is controlled, nor all art is commercialized. But I think commercial art is what you're saying.
Right. So, yeah, I think that again, here's the definition of propaganda: information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view.
So it's specifically misleading in order to change your political opinion.
Right, right. But at the same time, you are also trying to control a person through art. For example, if I show you the bottled water and I show you the picture of the snow-capped mountains and a refreshing stream, especially on a warm day or something, you're like, well, hey, I'm inspired
I'm
to
thirsty.
have yeah, I'm thirsty, and that's kind of the whole point of it, So I think that's part of it. And I found something here I want to share if I can
Sure.
view it. Let's see. Large icons. I'm trying to pull it. Here it is. And I'm posting it on the A Valid Answer, and it won't let me. Oh, no, that's not a video. Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
What did
Exit
you
without
did you
saving.
did you just post porn on our site?
No, no. Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, they make it hard for us to post what we want. They are so gung ho about getting us to run ads and
Yeah.
pay to boost stuff. But hey, there you go. That's Facebook using its power
Yeah.
to try to get us to do things. So here we go. Let's see. Yeah, I do not know how to just make a stinking post to the page.
Wow. Yeah, I don't. I'm not even trying that right now.
Like they've basically made it not an option. But again, they're trying to push us towards, paying money, doing things that they want us to do. Photo or video, upload
Yeah.
photos or video. Here we go. Here's a photo. All right. So I just shared a photo to the front page of A Valid Answer.
Okay.
And anybody who's a friend with us on there can have a quick peek at it. And you will see some of the art that we did when we were in college. And why
Oh, is
did
it
we?
those pictures?
Yes, just the one. And why did we create this? Were we
I
trying to
forgot about
influence
that.
somebody? Were we trying to do propaganda? This is a case of where I think this is art for art's sake. Now, in reality, you were practicing your photography skills.
There was a specific assignment,
Mm-hmm.
and the assignment was called General Focus, to where we shoot at f/22. When you shoot at f/22, things close up and things far. Yeah, things close up and things far away are both in focus. The smaller the iris is close, so the higher the number.
Yeah.
So I was demonstrating that by doing what I had learned before, which is you could fake miniature photography by putting somebody really far away and somebody really close, and the person really close looks like a giant and the person far away looks like they're shrunk. And since they're both in focus, it fools your eye to think that they're actually standing in the same place, because photography is a two-dimensional thing. So the only thing, when you're looking at photography, this is kind of interesting thing, the only thing that gives dimension is focus. So when you're looking at a picture, if everything is in focus, then everything looks flat and looks one-dimensional. But if this is sharp focus and things in front of it and behind it are blurry, then that gives your eye the cue that there is dimension and depth to the picture. So by taking this picture that you see on there and everything is in general focus, that's simulating that the things exist in the same plane and one is just bigger than the other. But yeah, so it was for an art class, but it wasn't to, I suppose you could say I was trying to sway the opinion of my teacher to give me a good grade. But I mean, that's kind of reaching, I think, on that argument.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so I guess what I'm trying to say here is not all art is necessarily propaganda, and maybe it's not always controlled to the extent that I'm arguing that it's control. But
Yeah.
I think we would find it hard pressed to find an example of something that doesn't fit into that. Even if you take a selfie, you get out there and you take your selfie and you're all, doing it from a certain angle, or you're trying to enhance.
Yeah, you try to
certain
hide your chin by
assets,
taking
or,
it. You go like that, and you're trying to,
Oh yeah,
I try to show off my cleavage. Sorry,
yeah, So what you're doing here is you're trying to influence other people to either find you attractive or to see that you're deadly serious, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So in a way, we are constantly engaged in trying to control other people by what we present for them, for their viewing.
Yeah.
So, but this is what we do. And so I think the art is simply a refined version of doing what we do, of being human.
Yeah.
In fact, I've often said that if art had a smell, it would be the only thing we would smell.
Because it's surrounded us. It's everywhere.
Right. The paint on your walls is really art
Somebody went
because
through and chose that color and mixed certain colors a certain way to get that to evoke a certain emotion.
precisely. You know, the desk, the most mundane object, the desk in your room, the pot in which your plant sits or something, the most
I don't
mundane
smoke
things,
pot. What are you
carpet,
talking about?
right? You know, the bad jokes that Scott
All
tells,
the time.
you know. So all of these things are touched by artists.
Yeah.
Artists have touched everything. You could even argue, I suppose, that God is the ultimate artist, right?
Oh
Who has
yeah, I would
crafted everything, right?
totally make that argument. Josh said something here. Actually, a couple of things. One, Carrie asked if I've ever used a 4x5. Yes, I had a class that did photography and we had 4x5 cameras that were awesome. Josh said, can you remove your point of view from the art that you produce? Now that is a great question, and I believe yes and no. I believe when you're creating art, a little bit of you is always going to go in there because you have certain influences and it's going to look a certain way, and you're going to be, but at the same time, as that was one of the things that I realized early on as a graphic artist, the main difference between a graphic artist that I found anyway and an artist, just a person who creates art and paint, is that the graphic artist is creating art for someone else. So, you know what I mean? And you're using your talents and your stuff and your own style, and people might be hiring you because they like your style, but they are asking you to create art for them. So can you remove your point of view? I think it's possible to remove your point of view if that's what you want to do. And that's where we go back to the whole, the wedding cake thing that happened, cause I can, that's a person making art. Can you be forced to remove your point of view when you're making art? Can you be forced to say, no, you cannot influence the art I'm asking you to create with your own opinions. You can only, then don't hire me to create your art. No, you cannot refuse. You have to. I mean, that's why I stood where I stood on that particular thing, saying no. An artist should be able to decide whether or not they're going to create art that doesn't represent their beliefs. But I think there are people who don't care. They're amoral in that area that they don't care. Say, hey, if you got money, I'll create whatever you want me to create. So I think it is possible to remove yourself from creating art, but at the same time, I think a little bit of yourself will always be there because that is the talent and the style that you are, and it's always going to find its way in.
Well, and if you are baking cakes and you choose not to bake cakes for a certain subset of the population, let's say as an atheist, I say I'm going to become an atheist baker and I'm not going to bake cakes for any kind of a Christian function. That's okay, I suppose, but guess what? I'm going to lose a lot of business.
Yeah, you are.
But that's my choice.
But that's okay.
That's me.
Yeah.
And I get that, and I more or less agree with that. I don't like the discrimination part of it. If the cake debate were about something with regards to race, one of the problems is I don't like discrimination when when a person is born a certain way.
Yeah, I understand.
If you were born with a certain skin color, I find that highly indefensible. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, if you're going to say I'm not going to bake a cake because, again, it's art, then you're simply closing yourself off to a large portion of the market. And that's your choice to go out of business, I suppose. But yeah, I don't. If the artist then is kind of in the cake, if you will, if the artist is in the movie, if the artist is in the music, then how responsible are they for how the music is received? You look at video games, you look at rap music, you look at Dungeons and Dragons. Remember back in the 80s, Dungeons and Dragons was this crazy thing.
Yeah.
And really all Dungeons and Dragons is really a rule set. And there are people who kind of design scenarios.
Yeah, yeah.
But we had Ozzy Osbourne, right? And he bit some bird's head off.
Yeah.
And he came to Bakersfield and played, bit the bird's head off. And the SPCA wouldn't let him come back. And people were like, oh my gosh, the kids are going to do drugs and the kids are going to commit suicide, do mayhem.
Yeah.
And we see this. We see it with video games. And we see it with, we had talked before the show about the NRA and pro-gun propaganda and all of this other stuff.
Or anti-gun propaganda, thank you.
Yes, are people being inspired to do what they do because of things that they see, the music they listen to, or Trump's tweets, what have you. And I think that's an important question. To what degree is the person who is creating
And the first time,
responsible for the outcome of the creation. And we can even cross apply this to God. God created the universe.
yeah.
Is God therefore responsible for the evil that exists within it?
No, that's a very good equation. It's a very good question and a very good equating it back down to it. Because again, the first time this really came up in society was Columbine. Columbine. What was it, 99, April of 99, or what? It was right around there, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
And
something.
it was it from what I understand, that the inspiration behind the look that they were going for was the movie The Matrix, which had just come out or was just coming out. That's why they went through in black trench coats with guns, and the big old thing kind of came up with, like how much were they influenced by the look of that movie, making shooting people look cool. I'm just bringing that up as a question because I know that was brought up at the time. I don't know if I necessarily believe that was an influence. I mean, I've seen The Matrix and I didn't go out and kill people, but and again, that's not what the argument is. The argument is not like, does this art cause people to do this? I don't because people are different, but at the same time, if there's someone on the edge and they see that piece of art and it does sway them to cross the edge, then is there any responsibility that the artist has for making something that pushed somebody over the edge?
Well, look at the lawsuits against gun manufacturers, right?
Yeah.
If you produce a firearm, are you now responsible for how that firearm is ultimately used? And a firearm is a lot different from a movie or a video game. A firearm literally has a specific purpose, which is to destroy.
Yeah.
Whereas a movie's purpose is really to entertain. But we can't get away from the fact that a movie also influences, especially young developing minds tend to be influenced.
And here's the thing, using that same
by
thing,
things that they see.
A movie, I would dare say, has more influence than a gun.
Mm-hmm.
A gun is not a gun. Sitting there and sitting there, it doesn't necessarily create an emotional response like a movie has the power to.
Mm-hmm. Right. It depends. I'm sure some people get emotional looking at firearms, but
I'm sure there's a sect of people that's like their fetish. So
yeah. Well, there are also people who are afraid of them. They get deathly afraid, and same with knives and other things. But I don't know the answer to this question.
That is very true, Josh.
But what I want to say is that what we put out into the world does have an impact on the people who consume what we produce.
Yeah.
Whether we are producing movies or paintings or building things, creating things, baking cakes, whatever it is, we do have an impact. Like a stone in a lake, the ripples go out, and we don't know where that impact ends. And at some point, I think it's ludicrous to argue that we have control or influence. Like if you sell your car and that person sells the car, and 2 or 3 buyers and sellers down the road, somebody crashes the car and someone passes away or is injured. Are you responsible because you sold the car to begin with? I mean, there's all these deep philosophical questions that we're getting into.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answers. All I can say is that we should be cognizant and we should produce what we produce with some degree of responsibility. And
well, define that. So because I understand what I believe I understand what you're getting at, which is I should take care knowing that I have the power to influence others, and I should be careful what I say. We always say this. We say this all the time to kids or whatever. You careful what you say. You're influencing people, and you got to be But at the same, if we're saying that, then are we not also saying that, okay, so if somebody does do something because they heard what you said, should we hold them responsible because we're warning them, we're practically threatening them by saying, careful what you say, you should be more responsible with your words. Well, does that go the other way? Now are you responsible because of your words? Or does saying that, does even saying that to say, hey, I want to act responsibly with my words and I want to be, a person, does even me acknowledging that now somehow imply that I should be held liable and responsible for the actions of what happens to the people who are influenced? Should I even be saying that to myself? Because in saying that, am I giving credence to the idea that I'm now responsible for how someone takes action based on what I said? And
Yeah.
should I?
I remember when I spoke to your youth group at your church, one of the first caveats I gave them was that I was not speaking with the aim of turning anyone into an atheist. And I actually deliberately tried to stay away from that kind of discussion because I do not want to get people to change their belief system because of something I say. I want people to arrive at their own conclusions and choose for themselves. I would be heartbroken if my words and actions motivated somebody to discard their religious faith and simply become an atheist. I think it's a very tough life to be an atheist, in fact. There's a lot of hardship and a lot of price that you pay. It's a high price to pay. And I don't want to inspire people to that. So I've dialed back a lot of my personal everyday atheist rhetoric. You don't see me posting about it on Facebook anymore.
Yeah.
And when I do talk to people, I'm very upfront with I'm not interested in making somebody a non-believer. Now, if you're a non-believer and you want to talk about that, that's fine. If you're a believer and you have legitimate questions, I may or may not answer them, but I am not going to do anything that's going to influence someone to abandon their religious faith, because when that happens, it's literally it has a catastrophic impact on
Yeah.
some people's lives, and I don't want to be responsible for that.
See,
So,
Josh says that right there. Josh Anderson says, I don't want to convert people either.
Mm-hmm,
And that's cool. But here's the thing. If someone does convert because of what you said, are you still responsible? Or are you not? Or are you not responsible?
well, maybe to some degree. You know, I get that everybody should be responsible for themselves, but remember, we're social. We're all interconnected like a web. So when one strand of the web is pulled in one direction, the other nodes of the web, if you will, feel it. And we, the people, are the nodes. We're being pulled one way or the other because of action on one strand of that web. So if I apply force, there is some mutual responsibility that I share with the consequences of that. It was like there was the Lebanese poet Gilbrain or whatever. He talked about how the innocent are also guilty along with the guilty because they saw the stumbling stone and did not remove it. He wrote this little collection of poems called The Prophet. It was really big in the 60s and 70s. But there is a little something to that if I see a stumbling stone and I don't take care to remove it, and then somebody comes along behind me and stumbles, in a way, I do have some culpability. Now, what's the level of culpability? Should I face the same consequence? Not necessarily, but there is some collective responsibility. And I don't know how to do justice in that case, but I think recognizing that I am my brother's keeper and the things that I put into the world have an effect gets me to think twice before I put something into the world, whether it's my personal philosophies, my atheism, whatever it may be. I try to think twice and act with care. And I think that's just about the most we can ask of people. And if people are acting with care, if they're giving you a disclaimer, and if they're coming out and saying, look, I made this, but it's really only there to entertain, it's not here to propagandize people. Or maybe I'm sending a message, and I'm sending a message in a certain medium, but I really want you to understand what the message means. When the Joker's killing people, it actually is a metaphor for this, which is actually happening in our society.
Well,
and I'm illustrating it in this way because I really can't go out and talk about it on face, otherwise the message won't be received.
And in the defense of an artist trying to do that, the fact that you would go out and tell people this is what I'm trying to do with the movie is counterproductive to what you're trying to do with the movie. You're trying. Well, I mean, the idea is if you're doing that, if the artist has to explain their art, then they didn't do their art very well.
Well, you look at comedians.
Yeah.
Comedians, and not just comedians of the present day. You look at how comedians are portrayed in the past. You look at the fool or the joker or the clown. That's always the person who's telling the truth. And they may put it across in a way that's humorous. And this is really the actual social role of the comedian, is to talk about and criticize things which you cannot criticize openly, because if you criticize it openly, they will kill you.
The court jester was there to make fun of the king.
Because the king would kill any member of the court who said, oh my God, you're like a horrible king. But the court jester, by making a joke out of it, can convey this to the king.
As long as the king wasn't too smart.
But that's entirely the purpose of comedy, is to provide social commentary on something that you cannot normally speak about. Otherwise, you could be punished or ostracized or what have you. You look at Dave Chappelle. He talked about cancel culture in his latest comedy
Yeah.
routine
The whole
about a
purpose,
month
the
ago.
whole
So
purpose of his
yes,
comedy routine was to challenge the idea of, we have to succumb to people being offended. Like, no, this is gonna offend
right.
you.
Right. And if he had simply sat down on the news and said, we got to stop this, or if he had, given, an article or column in the paper, or done an editorial, he would have been run out on a rail. But because he turned it into a comedy routine, he was able to express this
Well, that's the
in a way
problem
that
too, because
were
even though
open
he
to the
turned it into a
expression.
comedy routine, people are still
Well,
rejecting it and still like, no, you still can't do that. I mean, literally, the director of Joker, one of the comments he was making that has come out in all this news there is that he just won't do comedies anymore because he says woke culture has killed comedies. You can't do comedy anymore because everybody's so offended that you just can't. So he's like this. It's too dangerous to try to do comedies now because people are so offended by what you're saying.
mm. But somehow, if you start killing people on screen, nobody seems to be offended by that, I guess.
Right? That's where
So,
it's like. Yeah, I guess you're making some kind of. I guess you're to make some kind of social commentary, but at the same time, at what point are you? I mean, like satire. At what point? At what point does somebody reading The Onion actually believe that it's really true? Because
right.
it's trying to be so satirical that it really nails someone's real beliefs. Is The Onion responsible for someone who really believes that's real news?
Well, I think in the case of something like The Onion, they're pretty upfront that it's
Yeah,
fake, and anybody who has two brain cells to rub together will acknowledge that. But getting back to the origin of this conversation,
yeah,
talking about origin stories, the Joker, is there some kind of commentary there? And I think
oh
with
yeah,
superhero movies
all the time,
across the board,
all the
all
time.
superhero movies have some kind of commentary. Now, I don't know what the commentary
Despite what
is.
Martin Scorsese has said.
Did he have something to say about that, or
Yeah,
was he the director, producer?
in an interview, he says I can't watch those superhero movies because they don't actually make it either. They're not really about human beings, and he was kind of putting down the whole genre as saying it's not real cinema. And it's like, no, the whole genre of science fiction and that kind of stuff is to be able to have the discussions that you cannot have in real world storytelling. So I think unfortunately, I don't think he gets it, but that's just me as an artist criticizing another artist.
Well, Scott, I would encourage you to go ahead and see the movie. I might go out and see it, and maybe we'll
Maybe.
compare notes at some
It
point.
just right now it does not seem like the type of movie that I find entertaining. There's certain movies like people are comparing it. I've never seen the movie Seven, and people are comparing it to that, and I'm like, I know what happens in Seven. I've read about it, and it's a really brutal story and ending, and I just don't find that entertaining. And I wanted to find something. I kind of like a little bit of dark humor. You know what I mean? I really enjoyed The Dark Knight, and I enjoyed Heath Ledger's portrayal of Joker in there. And I the whole want to see a magic trick and slams the pencil in the guy's eye, and it's like, wow, it's a really great introduction for a character. Even though you just murdered somebody with a pencil through their brain, but
Wow.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
when you're really looking at it, but it's done in a way that's not in the same dark. It's just a certain level that I just don't. So yeah, maybe I might see it. It's just one of those like, man, I don't know if it's going to be something I'm going to enjoy. And
Well, we'll have to see.
yeah,
I remember this quotation from Joseph Stalin: "Dark humor is like food; not everybody gets it."
yep.
Yeah.
And if you're laughing right now, you have the same sense of humor as Marshall and I. And that's bad. That's bad.
Josh Gunderson made a great point. He said, "I think of it as a sign of the times. Imagine Blazing Saddles today."
Right.
And
Wouldn't
I've
even be
seen
made.
Blazing Saddles. Yeah, I've seen Blazing Saddles probably 100 times, especially as a kid growing up. But the humor in it is very, very racial. There's a lot of religious humor. You also look at history of the world. Basically, anything produced by Mel Brooks,
Yeah.
is so off color today that it wouldn't pass muster. It wouldn't get produced.
Yeah. Well, hey, I think this has been one of the most philosophical, like just purely philosophical, because there's nothing political. There's nothing like really like there's no real stakes weighing in, like, if this political party wins this, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, this was just a really purely philosophical discussion. I really enjoyed having it. I'm glad we did this today.
I like doing it.
Yeah.
Yes, one of these days we'll have to talk about, is God responsible for how people use the world?
Oh, okay. On that note, this has been A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. We're so glad that you guys have joined us today. And we're here on Sundays at 5 o'clock right here on A Valid Answer on Facebook, Kerncast on Facebook, kerncast.com. And until next time, I'm Scott.
I'm Marshall.
We'll catch you later.
Bye-bye.